All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for your patience. It is Monday, September 25th, 2023, now 7:15 p.m., so I'll call the Committee of the Whole to order. We will start first with a presentation by Visit Gahanna. Good evening, Director.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Lori Kappas, and I am the Executive Director of Visit Gahanna. Thank you for allowing me time to make a presentation this evening. I know that Ms. Padova gives regular CVB updates, but I thought it would be a good time to provide a more in-depth review of what our organization does and how it operates in the community. Most of what I'll be sharing you may already be aware of, but some audience members and people listening at home may not. So I'd like to take this opportunity to educate those who don't know what Visit Gahanna is and what we do. The Gahanna Convention and Visitors Bureau, known as Visit Gahanna, is a nonprofit destination marketing organization, or DMO, as we say in the tourism industry, whose mission is growing travel to Gahanna to support local businesses and jobs, future investments, and the community. The organization called Destinations International describes a DMO as a community asset responsible for programs promoting a community as an attractive travel destination by enhancing its public image as a dynamic place to live and work. We are funded by lodging tax that is collected from visitors who stay in our 4 hotels. Our organization also manages the Ohio Herb Center, and both organizations are located at 110 Mill Street in the Creekside District. In addition to myself, our staff includes Catherine Eichel, who is our Community Development and Event Manager. She plays a huge role in the planning and execution of our events, in addition to securing sponsorships and vendors. Our Marketing and Communications Manager is Jared White. He is a Gahanna Lincoln High School grad and the person behind our social media channels, as well as our website and blogs and other marketing and promotions. Amanda Ferguson and Lily Doty are both coordinators of the Ohio Herb Center. They develop and teach classes, manage social media and the gift shop, host group tours, work in the gardens around the Herb Center, and greet visitors, and generally get people excited about herbs. We also have a board of directors who generously give their time, energy, and ideas to our organization. Our board president, Jody Brown-Spivey, is actually here this evening. I mentioned previously that we are funded by lodging tax. This slide shows what the collections have been over the past few years. As you can see, lodging tax collections saw a sharp decrease in 2020 and have slowly been climbing back each year since, although we are still not back to pre-COVID numbers. Our hotels have a lot more competition than they did previously, with more and more short-term rentals like Airbnbs popping up in the community, and many new hotels have also opened just outside of Gahanna. Another contributing factor is the increase in long-term stays of 30 days or more in our hotels. 2 of the Gahanna hotels are considered extended stay properties, which means they cater to people needing to stay for longer periods of time. The issue is when anyone stays in a hotel for 30 days or more, they are not required to pay lodging tax. And we're seeing the effects of that. And unfortunately, with all the development taking place, this trend is not likely to change anytime soon.
Director, can I interrupt you briefly with a quick question? On your previous slide, that's lodging tax only, not reflective of any sales or ticket sales or any revenue?
Nope,
like that?
that's just lodging tax.
Thank you.
So what do we do with the lodging tax dollars that we do receive? We continuously promote Gahanna as a great place to visit, live, attend special events, and generally spend time and money. Our staff is constantly thinking of ways to attract visitors. Gahanna has so many assets like beautiful parks, trails, and waterways, great restaurants serving unique and delicious cuisine, historic places, breweries and distilleries, and tons of fun activities and events. We showcase all these assets and more in our weekly happenings newsletter, on social media, and in regular blogs. We promote Gahanna as a preferred place to host celebratory gatherings such as weddings, birthdays, and family reunions. We encourage groups of all types and sizes to consider Gahanna for group tours. We offer special services to tour and event planners such as welcome bags for guests, and we help them with securing room blocks and event venues. A huge part of what we do is to create reasons for people to come to Gahanna and for the community to have fun things to do and enjoy where they live. Our biggest undertaking is the Creekside Blues and Jazz Festival, which had over 20,000 people in attendance this year from at least 27 states and more than 50 cities all over Ohio. Not only does this event have a tremendous economic impact on Gahanna, but it also brings awareness to the many great things that are offered in our city. I think it's also worth mentioning that the festival allows many local nonprofit groups the opportunity to earn money for their organizations by volunteering during the event. Shortly after the Creekside Blues and Jazz Festival, our staff shifts and gears to start planning the holiday light celebration, which is held the Sunday before Thanksgiving. If you've ever attended, you know it is a family fun event that kicks off the holiday season for the community. Several local nonprofit organizations participate in this event, as well by offering special activities and at the same time continuing to bring awareness to those groups. Herb Day is another event we are responsible for. The staff of the Ohio Herb Center and Visit Gahanna work together on this one. It attracts gardeners, plant lovers, and herb enthusiasts, and it draws attention to Gahanna's herb capital designation. Other events and activities we host include an annual meeting, Herb and Restaurant Week, the Santa Race, and we do Santa visits at the Ohio Herb Center. We partner with other organizations on Midweek at the Creek series, Creekside Charity Chocolate Walk, and the newly created Creekside Cornhole League that started last Wednesday and was lots of fun, by the way. For other events taking place in the city that we don't host ourselves, we do our best to help with promotions, and we also provide resources to the event organizers. Gahanna has many assets, and part of our job is to package those assets in a way that makes people want to spend time here. Visit Gahanna is responsible for the creation and distribution of various marketing materials like the Gahanna Visitor's Guide, the Creekside District brochure, our wedding and event guide, the Herb Capital Experience brochure, and the historic walking tour brochure. We also continue to promote Gahanna as Ohio's herb capital through the coordination of the Herbal Cocktail Trail Passport, which is offered seasonally throughout the year. The current edition of the Herbal Cocktail Trail includes 9 different establishments all over Gahanna. The previous passport garnered attention from Ohio Magazine recently, which published a 6-page spread about the cocktail trail in their May issue. Of course, we love it when we earn media attention that we don't have to pay for, like the example I just gave with Ohio Magazine. But we often need to purchase advertising to get the word out about great things that Gahanna has to offer. This slide lists many of the places that we advertise. This next slide is a snapshot of how many people we've reached with our advertising and promotions this year so far. I'm pleased to report that we have already surpassed the amount of media impressions we had last year by over 2 million, and the year isn't even over yet. Our website visits have nearly doubled from last year. We have gained more than 6,000 followers on social media so far this year, and the amount of Facebook users we have reached is up by over 30%. Oops. I mentioned earlier that we manage the Ohio Herb Center, so I want to touch on that briefly before wrapping up. The Herb Center is a tourist attraction of its own. It's located in the historic Nafsker Miller House across from Creekside Plaza, which also houses the offices of Visit Gahanna and the Visitor Center. The Ohio Herb Center offers many classes throughout the year for people to learn about herbs and their multitude of uses. This year alone, we have hosted 42 classes and workshops to date, with several more being offered in the coming months. These classes attract people from all over Ohio and sometimes surrounding states. In addition to classes and workshops, the staff often receives requests to speak to various groups about herbs and to participate in events around Central Ohio, such as the Pollinator Palooza at Franklin Park Conservatory. The Herb Center is a destination for tour groups as well. In fact, this summer we hosted 3 different motor coach groups who came from the Chicago area to learn about various herbal-related topics. The Ohio Herb Center gift shop offers various herbal and Gahanna-specific products, some of which are sold by local vendors and artisans. The locally made items are very popular with residents and guests, as well as the bulk herbs that are available. An interesting thing to note is that the majority of guests who come to the Ohio Herb Center for shopping or classes are not from Gahanna. So many of them inquire about other activities they can enjoy while they are here. And that makes the relationship between the CVB and the Ohio Herb Center an ideal marriage. Thanks again for your time this evening. I hope you're all able to join us for the Holiday Light celebration on November 19th.
Thank you, Director Kappas. And I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say thanks for all that you and your staff and your volunteers and your board do. It's greatly appreciated. Questions or comments from colleagues?
I think you ought to add that we have a golf course, too, on your list. You had to add that big list, and if you put that golf
Of the
course on there,
assets?
yeah, they'll want to know, people will want to know that, so.
All right. Thank you very much, Director. Okay, next up, Public Arts Policy Status Update and Discussion. I believe at our September 5th meeting, Mayor, you had promised to do some work and circle back with council and provide an update. hoping you were able to provide an update.
Absolutely, thank you. So as I think I've shared with you before, following our discussions in April and May, I engaged with our city attorney and then worked with outside counsel in conjunction with Mr. Malarski to identify and implement a best practice process that would allow us to follow the creation and implementation of a legally appropriate arts policy. Based on legal counsel's recommendation, I identified people within the community who would serve on a resident advisory panel for the purpose of developing and recommending an arts policy to me for the adoption that would govern the appropriate display of artwork on public property and by the city as well. Looked at various sectors within the community, folks from, also do research within the community for people based on legal counsel's representation within the arts community, parks, schools, and also legal background as well. Those members were identified and confirmed their willingness to participate. Last Monday, September 18th, I issued an order effectively establishing a seven-member panel comprised of community members, worked with outside counsel and have been working with outside counsel to secure availability for a meeting. And if my computer had not decided it needs a new life after today, yes, I will work on the new computer tomorrow. Miranda, thank you. An email would have gone out to the panel today with some availability dates for a meeting hopefully next week. So we are moving forward. The panel will be tasked with coming back with a recommended policy to me no later than October 31st. If they're able to do it beforehand, great. But October 31st would be the deadline for that.
Questions, comments from colleagues? Are you able to share the responsive individuals?
Sure, absolutely, be happy to. Natasha Davis, who's a Gahanna resident, also a lawyer as well. Nikki Gagliardi, who serves on our Parks and Recreation Foundation. So since a lot of our artwork goes within our parks or is asked to be in there, that's an important representation. Sharon Iseringhausen from the Schools Community Arts Program. That's three. Kevin McGinn, I believe, is here as well, an artist within the community. A member of the Gahanna Area Arts Council to be designated. They have to designate their representative. We'll ask them to do that. I think I communicated to them back in July that they would have a seat around that table. How many is that, 5? Again, I don't have my notes in front of me. Robert Mullins, who is a sculptor, extremely talented sculptor that lives within our community. He has done artwork and placed artwork in communities around the country. So he is very familiar with arts policies that are in place all around our country in different communities, and especially artwork in public places. So he will be, I think, very helpful to that as well. And Julie Hess from the Art Garden Academy. I think that's 7.
Yes, ma'am. And so to clarify, it sounded in your statement that the charge is broader than just a content moderation policy.
So what I'm asking the panel to do is to research, basically develop a recommended arts policy, whether that involves the establishment of a separate commission that would determine what goes, that is a quasi-governmental entity, much like Planning Commission. I don't know what the panel will come back with. They will work with our outside counsel, who will create parameters for them to make sure we are legally compliant, ultimately in the arts policy that is established. But it will be up to that panel to make a recommendation to me as to what an arts policy looks like and what best process we should follow after that.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
I do have
Oh,
a question.
yes,
I'm
Mr. Renner.
sorry.
No.
I'm sorry, I was just writing notes. Thank you, Mayor. So you keep saying that you're talking to outside counsel. Is that person or firm the entity that's consulting for this? Or is there anybody who's an expert in this?
They are an expert in this. That's
Okay.
why I worked with Mr. Malarski to identify.
So a law firm?
Yes, it's a law firm. Right, correct.
Okay, so.
Mark Landis and Aaron Glasgow are First Amendment experts. So yes, they will be helping to guide that process for us.
Mark Landis
Yes,
and who?
Aaron Glasgow
Okay.
from Isaac Wiles.
Okay. I do have another question.
Yes, sir.
So I'm hearing rumors, and I think some of my colleagues are hearing rumors, that there's something about, and I'm just asking if you can actually give validity to this rumor or expand upon this rumor. But hearing that the snow blades, which have always been, for the past, I don't know, almost as long as I've been on council, painted by school children.
Correct.
And then displayed at the holiday lights. And I've heard, again, it's a rumor, that that program has actually been shut down, and it may put at risk the display of this. So I was just wondering if you could actually add to
Sure,
that or
that would
expand
be not
upon it?
true.
Okay.
In fact, I believe our service department was delivering the snowplows or preparing the snowplows to be painted. The snowplows would need to be completed by November 19th, obviously for holiday lights to be displayed. The deadline of October 31st should allow enough time for that. In the meantime, I know that I've talked with Ms. Iseringhausen and actually need to craft an email to her. We discussed some of the parameters around just being very general with not depicting any holidays. We tried to be as neutral as possible with parameters, but again, understanding that a policy would be adopted and in place before November 19th.
Oh,
Excellent,
so
this is good news.
that's so good, because all those little things that were going around there, it wasn't true, was it? That's just amazing to
Just
me.
need to ask a question, happy to answer it.
Just
Yeah, that's why we're
wonderful.
asking.
Thank you.
I'm not sure why the anger, but thank you, Mayor. I really do appreciate that.
Ms. Bowers, did you have a question?
No, I think now that I have clarity, so the expectation is that the proposed content moderation policy would be adopted prior to October 31?
It would be presented to me no later than October 31 for adoption. So it would be in place by November 19th. And if they get it done sooner than that, that's even better. I believe we heard the Arts Council say that they had proposed policies that they could share that might help to accelerate that process as well.
All right, I'm just trying to make sure I understand timeline, because I appreciate the understanding what the scope is, what the deliverable is, what the timeline of it is, and who's serving on that board. So that's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, I guess just to piggyback, it sounds like it's going to be an ongoing work. So we deliver a content moderation policy, and there may be additional deliverables after that based upon coordination with the outside counsel, what the committee is projecting. Or is your goal that their work ends October 31st?
My goal, I believe the expectation is that their job is to craft and recommend a policy to me, and then their panel work would be completed.
Okay.
Would you mind circulating the order that you issued last Monday?
Absolutely, I would be happy to do it, but I can't right now, so I'll have to do it in the morning when I get a better computer that will connect.
All right,
Sorry.
thank you.
Anything further on this, folks? Okay. All right, well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Next, we will turn to items from the Department of Public Service. Good evening, Director.
Public Service, excuse me, only has one item this evening. We want to do an ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriation for the water meter fees. The Department of Public Service has received funds over the last quarter for the water fees. These funds are currently unappropriated and unencumbered. The department respectfully requests an ordinance for supplemental appropriation.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or comments from colleagues?
Thank you.
All right, are we good with first and then consent? All right, thank you. Next up, items from council office. I can go ahead and take this first one for the resolution. As many folks may be aware, Mr. Mark Lowry, teacher at the high school and broadcast journalism television, was recently honored and named as the 2024 Ohio Teacher of the Year by the Ohio Department of Education. Mr. Lowry has indicated he's available next Monday to come and receive the resolution. This is, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, first, maybe a second procolution that we're,
I think it's our second proclamation.
okay,
Yes.
so doing this one jointly. So I know the mayor and I, among others, were in attendance at the ceremony where he received quite the honor. I think for me personally, it was the coolest part of it was hearing the students' reaction to the news. So very excited to have Mr. Lowry join us next week. Happy to receive any edits folks may have in the event. So. But barring that, are folks okay with consent on that one then? Sure. All right. For the ordinance, I will turn to Mr. Clerk. Or Mr. City Attorney, I'm sorry.
Yes, if I may. After this was, just recently, I found out that the chief and I are not on the same page on this, like I thought we were. And so he and I discussed this, and I would ask if you would table this so that he and I may have further discussions before this gets presented.
Wonderful. We don't need to take any official action, we just,
No.
when it's ready, we'll put it back on committee agenda.
Thank you very much.
You may want to say something.
We did receive, I believe it was addressed to Ms. Bowers, but all the council members did receive some suggested changes and edits. Have you seen that, Mr. City Attorney and Chief? Okay. So thank you very much for submitting that. All right. Next up, items from the Department of Finance. Good evening, Director.
Good evening. Have a request for supplemental appropriations for you tonight. The first one has to do with construction throughout the city, has been on the increase, resulting in more developer payments that go into escrow. So with those payments, ultimately we have to release them. So requesting supplemental appropriations for the developer's escrow fund for $350,000. And then also on the second part is for the sidewalk program. As previously approved, 50% would be allowed for those who self-performed work for the 2021 and 2022 program, up to what the engineer's estimate was. So we started receiving those requests, but didn't have the appropriations in place. This is also a request for supplemental appropriations for the capital improvement fund to pay those reimbursements.
Okay, thank you, Director. Any questions, comments from colleagues?
I just want to say thank you very much to you and Director Comlink for working on this. I think this is a great way for us to remedy and then continue to build on an initial model that we've now, I think, made a little more resident-friendly, so I'm really grateful for your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, and I would just echo my colleague Ms. Bowers' comments. So, anything else for the Committee of the Whole before we adjourn and go to Finance?
So was it first in consent?
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Yep, first and consent, okay on that one for folks?
Yep.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bowers. All right, thank you. We will adjourn Committee of the Whole, and I'll turn things over to Chair Schnetzer.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Van Meter, just let me know when you're ready. Ready. Good to go. All right. Let's commence Finance Committee for 9/25/2023. We'll go with that. We just have one item on the agenda. It's a discussion item, conveniently enough, from the Department of Finance, the Q2 financial report for fiscal year 2023. And with that, Director Burry, you have the floor.
Council chambers. You remember what that is to get the...
It's 30 pages. If anybody wants to know.
just my computer.
It's showing my-
Okay, mine's the worst.
There it is. I had to click on it. Okay, now I think I'm ready. Okay, so similar agenda to previous quarterly reports. We're going to talk about the results for the general fund, special funds, capital improvement fund, what our income tax trends are through the second quarter, how our investments are producing, and then a conclusion based on those results.
And Director Byrd, just very quickly, as far as how best to proceed, are you okay with like a pause in between the major funds groups, just to see if there's any questions?
Yeah,
Okay, thank
absolutely.
you.
So we're going to start with the general fund revenue. So for the budget, we're at about 60% of what was budgeted for the year, and we're at 18% higher than 2022. We're right about where we should be compared to the budget, and then the main drivers of that 2022 increase is investment income, followed by income tax. We also see that fines and fees and license and permits are also trending a little bit higher. This is due to increased activity for sports and shelter rentals, mayor's courts, and then again, that construction throughout the city. Moving on to general fund expenditures, 40% compared to the budget, we're at about 11% increase compared to 2022. When you take encumbrances into account, we're at about 58% of the budget. So again, right about where we should be. Looking at the increase compared to 2022, it's mainly coming from that salaries and benefits, very similar to Q1. We had the negotiated agreements, the changes to the unclassified salary ordinance, and then filling of new positions, then filling of some vacant positions from the previous year. Everything pretty much increased. You'll notice, though, that contract services decreased a little bit. We had some 2022 one-time initiatives that we don't have repeated this year. Creekside Master Plan, we had some services for payroll and economic development that we won't be incurring again. So some of those one-time items in 2022 not being repeated. So looking at kind of that bottom line there, that excess of expenditures over revenues, under revenues for this quarter. So we're adding back about $5.1 million before transfers and advances are considered. So then looking at that transfer and advance in, again, transfers are mainly related to debt service. We had that final advance in from the water fund, so that'll be stopping after this year. So adding back about $4.5 million to fund balance, bringing us to a Q2 fund balance of about $33 million. $5.5 million of that reserved for encumbrance, $7.45 reserved for emergency, bringing us to $20 million unreserved, which is equivalent to about 10 months of operating expenditures. Any questions on the general fund?
Anything from council on that? All right, thank you, Joanne.
So again, kind of looking across all three of the special revenue funds, you'll see similar results. So compared to the budget, very similar to the general fund, right about that 60%, with income tax right about 55%. Seeing the majority of the increase in expenditures, again, coming from that salaries and benefits as expected. You'll notice for the public safety and public service fund, they're still trending low in that salaries and benefits. That's because there's a couple still unfilled positions in both of those areas. Parks and Rec, right where they should be, as they're kind of leading into the middle of their season, the end of June. So right about 50% is right about right for them. So ending the year, trying to push us forward even faster. Look at that. Ending the quarter with everybody, all three funds receiving an increase, 21,000, public safety, 278 for Parks and Rec, and about 1.4 million for the public service fund. So that's how they lined up compared to their budget. Looking again at all three funds across their actual results, seeing increases, mainly the result of income tax. You'll see public safety and Parks and Rec look a little bit off with their percentages, but again, we had a change in allocation as far as income tax for those two funds based on their expected operations for the year. Looking at previous year compared to this year, we're up in all areas as far as expenses. Again, as expected for salaries and benefits. And then again, seeing that increase in participation with Parks and Rec and seeing that continued increase back to those pre-pandemic levels. So seeing those increase over 2022. Any questions on the special revenue funds?
Colleagues and council? Nothing? All right, thank you. Please continue, Joy.
Yep. So finally, looking at the capital improvement fund, very similar, looking at revenue, right about 55%, 54% of budget, increase of about 7% in income tax mainly. Looking at expenditures are right about 8% of what was planned, but we have a majority of that sitting on encumbrances, waiting for those projects to kind of work through their cycles. Again, this would be the end of June, so as we move through the third quarter, we'll see that kind of increase as those projects are kind of continuing and going through the rest of the year. Looking at unreserved fund balance, we have almost $5 million in unreserved fund balance at the end of the second quarter. Any questions on capital?
Hearing none.
So now we'll just take a little bit of a deeper dive into income tax and where we're kind of seeing the majority of those increases. No big surprise. We were planning on seeing some increases in withholding taxes based on the economic expansion that the area is experiencing. We were continuing to expect that net profit to continue to be decreased as businesses kind of continue to right themselves after the pandemic and how they're working with their business models. The one area that is a little different is if you look at that individual line, that is quite a big increase for individual. So we're going to keep on monitoring that as we go into the third quarter. My hunch is that this is some sort of anomaly and it's not going to be a continued trend. There's some sort of business sold, some sort of large winnings, some sort of windfall to some individual. But we'll look at that a little bit closer in the third quarter and see if it appears to be some sort of windfall or if we are expecting that to continue to trend that way into the future. As we kind of go into investments, kind of seeing our breakout there, we have about 1.2% that sits in cash. That's what we use to pay the bills. The rest is all invested in some form or fashion, whether it be treasuries, corporate paper, Star Ohio, or the mutual fund. So kind of looking at how investments are trending, we're like 7 times what we expected already. So the interest rates they just continue to go up. We're going to continue to see that trend. We are seeing inflation come down, historic 9.1% down to 3% by the end of the second quarter. But the feds aren't going to let up on those interest rates just yet. There is still the inverted yield curve that everybody's kind of keeping an eye on. But again, kind of the strange thing that's been since October of 2022, I believe. And all the other indicators are not pointing towards a downturn. So, but they're keeping their eye on it. So not expecting interest rates to go anywhere for the rest of 2023. So we're just going to continue to see those investment income trend higher than expected. So looking at that kind of in a summary, still experiencing that same economic expansion that we were in that first quarter. That's bringing about some revenue stabilization. We're kind of seeing things kind of trend the way we're expecting to, coming in the way it should throughout the quarters. we're expecting that, to see that through the rest of the year. So Q3, Q4, I'm not expecting much of a different story coming forward with you with those results. We are seeing some tamp down as far as unemployment. It's tightening. It's still historically high, and there's still a lot of positions out there. But the job market is tightening up a little bit, which help us with retention and attraction. So I think we're just going to continue to see good results as we move through 2023.
Anything from council?
I don't.
Joanne, I just have a quick question about going back to the investment portfolio. Obviously, that's a nice, I guess, little boost. What did you say, 6 times or 7 times more?
Seven
than what was it?
times.
7 times what was
Yeah.
more than expected? Has there been any talk with the city's investment advisor about when might be appropriate to kind of push those maturities out to lock in some of those rates? You mentioned earlier the inverted yield curve, and I think
Yeah.
certainly as we sit here right now, it makes sense to stay, frankly, very short in like almost 30-day or even 90-day bills or something like that. But we know this won't last forever.
Right.
So while it's nice for now, has there been any discussion about maybe lengthening that portfolio a little bit?
They're looking more towards Q1.
Okay.
They think there's still going to be a couple rate hikes through the end of the year, but probably going to see that kind of, not necessarily start to come down, but kind of smooth or stay equal. Hoping at that point that there are some yields that can be made with those further out. But right now, the way interest rates are falling and the way the curve is, we've been staying relatively short.
Sure. All right. Anything from council before we, I guess, go home?
Good news.
Thank you so much, Joanne. It's always easy when revenues outpace expenses, so thank you so much. Thus concludes finance, everybody.